Well, hello YouTube. What do we have here? It's a Gibson, what is it, BR6? Otherwise just known as the Gibson 6 amplifier. This is an old one, and it's in rough shape. And I've been dragging it around for years and years because it's going to be so much work to fix it. I kind of took a stab at fixing it. Oh, by the way, pardon the random explosions you hear in the background. It's July 3rd. And there's a lot of extra fireworks this year. So many of the professional shows were canceled. It's funny how those professional grade mortars kind of just found their way onto the black market mysteriously. Anyway, so what do we have here? We have a lot of work, and it's certainly going to be multiple installments of restoring this little Gibson 6. So let's take a look at it. It's pretty much all original except for the things that I already did to it starting about, 10 years ago or so. When I first got this thing, I took a stab at it. I wound up having to order parts, and I wound up having to move a couple times, and the thing got stuck in a box and basically ignored and forgotten about for a long time. So let's take a look and see all the work we have ahead of us. First we have the cabinet, which is this kind of early canvasy, and I swear this pattern is really kind of cool and weird. It's yellowed a lot more than it's showing up on camera. It's showing up fairly black and white on camera. It's more gray and yellow in real life, but it almost looks like they took a carpet and put ink or something on the carpet and then dabbed the canvas across the carpet to get this pattern, because doesn't it look like a loop carpet? It really does, and it's got all those rows in it. Anyway, pretty rough shape, but cool and all original. There's the back of it. No shielding there, just a nice piece of pine, spruce or something. What do we got? Lighting is kind of challenging out here in the workshop. A little bit of water staining there in the bottom. Not too bad, nothing too rotten. Those studs down there mount the front baffle board. These are a little bit loose, but they're probably still solid enough, or can be reinforced somehow or replaced. And look how dark that wood is. That is oxidation that does that, and it takes a long time to do it. If you scratch that wood, it'll be much lighter underneath. Yeah, so the chassis is, it's still pretty solid. The front baffle board, on the other hand, is, well, we got other issues with the chassis too, such as the leather strap being completely missing. That's going to be fun to replace that. Front baffle board kind of looks okay at first glance, but it's actually going to have to be completely replaced. The way it works, let me flip it over. The speaker mounts via these studs which go through the wood, and as you can see, they've completely pulled through here, and the plywood is delaminated there, and it's done even worse here. That could be patched up if it weren't just for the fact that this thing is it's got other problems. If I'm going to go to the even some of the backers are coming apart. Yeah, it could be all glued back together, and I could bolster this and or cut out and replace part. That's, look at how simply this thing is constructed. It's you could make this with just about as much effort as repairing it and have a superior result. So I'm probably just going to replace this. And that'll solve the problem. So that's one challenge. that this thing has. Luckily, I was Lefroy 10-year. I took this tube and stored the original grill, which I won't bother to pull it out, but you can take my word for it that it's actually in very clean condition, no tears in it or anything. It's completely fine, which, considering the condition of the rest of the thing, that's pretty amazing. And it being a synthetic fiber, I was able to clean it very well. And, as you can see, it cleaned up very, very nicely. When it's reinstalled, it's going to look great. It'll look like it was replaced when it wasn't. Saving the amp for last. Moving right along, we have the original blue Jensen with the end bell. This is, for the curious, a P12R C5920. One of the things that will probably lead me towards reconing versus replacing this is that this speaker has this modification down here for mounting the output transformer. Yes, this thing actually has the output transformer mounted to the speaker, which is pretty freaking crazy, really, because that means that these long wires right here have high voltage on them. And that doesn't definitely not pass modern muster. Honestly, if I were, and I'm kind of tempted to maybe just mount the output transformer to the bottom of the chassis here and make this much shorter and protected, rather than just have it flapping around in the back of the speaker there, where people tend to stick their hands, shove cables, pedals, and other things they shouldn't put back there. Nevertheless, they put them back there, and having this old cloth high voltage wire back there, not a great idea. But in any event, that's the way this thing was designed. So that's something that'll have to be considered. So what's wrong with the speaker? Apart from being extremely dirty, the paper is pretty much dry rotted on the coil former. And if you listen, crunch, 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 there's no way to repair that short of replacing the whole cone. And the thing is if that paper is that degraded to where it's just kind of flaking apart like an old library book, got left in an attic, then chances are the paper for the cone is going to be brittle, and it needs to be replaced. There's no saving it. Vintage. It's original, man. Keep it original. Well, at some point you just have to be practical. There's only so much you can keep original. So, moving right along to the actual amplifier itself. Let's start with, let's flip it around so that it's more right way up. Okay, so as you can see, not deep rust, but a lot of surface rust. And it's eaten through most of the paint. It's eaten through the writing in a lot of places. It's completely gone here and here. But you can still see what it is and what it's supposed to be. I don't know if there are stencil kits for recreating this, and if repainting this and relabeling it, originally is even possible. I'll look at that, but I'm not going to hold my breath that that's doable with this amp anyway. It's not like not like a silver-faced Fender where you can just get a new metal plate and screw it over, screw it on the top, pull off your dial, screw the thing down, and you're done. So what I probably will do is just very, very lightly clean it, try to remove as little further paint as possible, and then give it like a clear coat seal, something that bonds to rust, maybe, I don't know, something to just kind of preserve it, and just let it have that old, literally rustic look. We're missing 2 of the chicken head knobs. These are like a brown Bakelite kind of ones. These are hard to find. And other than that, the pots seem to be okay. I think I cleaned them up, at least the internals. These jacks all need to be cleaned, obviously. Nuts taken off and cleaned, and everything burnished. Take the little eye out of the pilot light, ultrasonic it, and straighten out the feet on that transformer, which is bent. Obviously, the thing got dropped at some point, and well, you can tell exactly which direction it got dropped because the transformer wanted to keep going that direction. And let's take a look inside and see what we've got. A lot of work here. Now, the power cord is just tacked in. I tacked in a power cord a long time ago just to work on it, so it's not routed properly or done cleanly, and nothing in here is finished. Like I said, it was a work in progress when I shelved it. Looks like I replaced the main filter cap. I believe that's a 20 microfarad at 500. I have to flip it around to see what it is, but I believe that's what it is, and I didn't really put it in there permanent like. I just kind of left it flapping around in the breeze. I think I was more interested in bringing this thing up on a variac and seeing that it was generating the right voltages and that it was even worth further effort than that. It must have been, because I went on to do some other work. Looks like I replaced the original cap in the tone network, and looks like I paralleled a couple of 47 nanofarads to get the value I was after. And I did that fairly cleanly. So I got off to a start, and it looks like I replaced some of the power supply caps here as well. And it looks like I replaced all of the various voltage dropping resistors. And that was done pretty cleanly. I didn't just tack them in. So I must have thought that this thing was on its way to a repair. Looks like I didn't touch any of these 0.05 at 600 Budrock. Budrock? What is that? Cornell Doubliers. I don't know if I tested them or, well, I don't know. They're filthy anyway. And that domino cap almost certainly has to go. Those are almost always leaky. Looks like I did a couple more of these in parallel for an input AC coupling for one of the inputs, for the microphone input, I guess. And yeah, so not a lot else. And oh, look at the backs of these pots are incredibly rusty. So they feel fine from the top here, but the metal cans they're in are just covered in rust. So I might have to take those apart and clean that rust off. That's just bad juju to have that kicking around in there. Yeah, so as you can see, we got a lot of work here to do on this amplifier. I probably have the tubes stuffed away in a box somewhere. If I remember correctly, it was just like a 5Y3 or some kind of, and it's a rectifier, and then a pair of 6V6. Then I believe a 6SL7, and then I believe a 12AX7, which is kind of interesting that they mixed the 9-pin miniature with the octal. One thing that's interesting that I noticed about this, and I haven't dug the schematic back out yet, so I don't know if it's covered on the schematic, but this is kind of a little nuance of the construction of this thing. If you notice this 12AX7, well, I'm assuming it's a 12AX7, but this little 9-pin miniature socket, you notice that it's a little bit above. It's kind of hard to see at this angle, but it's not directly mounted to the chassis. There are rivets that mount it, but in between the 9-pin miniature socket and the chassis, there are rubber grommets, insulating grommets. I believe you see them right there, just under where my fingernail is pointing there, and then there's a ground wire or some sort of reference. The shield is referenced to some sort of voltage. I can trace it back and figure it out, but it must be a ground. But it's interesting though, because there's this tie point here where all these things are connected up, and it connects to this metal plate, and then that goes through the other side, and you can see even even more here that there's rubber grommets isolating this tube socket. I apologize for that. I'm trying to keep this thing from falling over, adjust the light, and hold the camera steady. Okay, but as you can see, the tube socket does not contact the chassis. It's electrically floated from the chassis so that the shield that covers the tube, so it's the way they're shielding this tube. It's not just to the chassis ground, which is very interesting. So I'm going to look more into that when I'm working on the thing and figure out why and see if that's see what that shielding scheme is all about, and if it works, and if it's something that could be copied elsewhere, if it was a good idea that just was forgotten about, or a terrible idea that's, makes you die if you touch the thing. Who knows what it is on an amplifier of this vintage. They're both equally likely. So there we have it. A lot of work to do. So this is the first part, wrapping up, and next part will probably be parts ordering time, right? Assessing this thing, yanking some stuff out, taking some measurements. I probably want to test these transformers before I go any further. That would be a smart thing to do, retest these transformers. All right, take it easy.